Welcome to the Privacy Report, your essential guide to navigating the digital world without sacrificing your rights. Today, we are looking at something huge. A really fundamental shift in how people are starting to use the internet. We're talking about the flight from these traditional ad-driven search giants toward a new wave of privacy-first tools.
Yeah, and this transition, it's not just about getting rid of annoying banner ads. For decades, the whole model of the internet has been built on this quiet, persistent collection of just vast amounts of behavioral data. Every single thing you type, every link you click, it all goes into building this detailed psychological portrait of you, your habits, your interests.
And that portrait, that digital fingerprint, is what powers everything. It's the engine for targeted ads, for the recommendations you see, and maybe most importantly, it shapes the information you're even shown in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think people are finally waking up and realizing that this trade, knowledge in exchange for my personal data, it's a deal they just don't want to make anymore.
Exactly. The rise of encrypted search is a direct rejection of that entire model. People are actively seeking out alternatives that, at their core, minimize data collection. They strip away identifiers.
They just want to feel like they're not being watched every time they go online.
That's it. They're tired of that constant feeling of surveillance.
So our mission today is to really give you a complete picture of this movement. We need to unpack why this is happening now, how the technology actually works to protect you, beyond the marketing slogans, and what you really need to look for when choosing a service to trust.
And hey, before we get into all the technical details, make sure you're staying on top of all the latest developments by subscribing to our email newsletter. It's at theprivacyreport.net.
Okay, so let's get right to it. Why is this happening right now? Why is this generation of encrypted search engines finally gaining real mainstream traction? Is this just, a niche thing for tech enthusiasts, or is something bigger going on?
Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely a widespread alarm. The surge we're seeing is a direct, measurable response to how heavily the mainstream platforms rely on data harvesting. It's not an abstract concept anymore. Public awareness has been radically changed by some of these high-profile investigations and research that show just how pervasive these hidden data flows are.
Right. When you find out that your search for, new hiking boots isn't just a query, but it's also generating all this metadata, your IP address, your location, your device, all logged and maybe even shared, it completely changes how you see that service. You realize you're not the customer, you're the product.
Precisely. And we should be clear about what we mean by data collection here. We're talking about routine tracking, third-party sharing, and this constant stream of telemetry.
That's the diagnostic data, right? The
Right.
stuff your device sends back automatically.
Exactly. For years, that was just the invisible price of using the internet. Now, people are looking for tools specifically designed to cut off that telemetry stream.
And the timing, it seems to line up perfectly with regulatory shifts, doesn't it? I'm thinking of laws like GDPR in Europe and CCPA in California.
That's a massive catalyst. Huge. That regulatory pressure has forced this whole idea of data minimization out of the niche privacy forums and into the mainstream conversation. When governments start telling companies to collect less data, it sort of legitimizes the desire for privacy for the average person.
It makes it feel less paranoid and more like a basic right.
Yes. People who might not be experts are now demanding better practices because the law is telling them they deserve it. The whole industry is being forced to clean up its act, and privacy-first search engines are riding that wave.
So the demand is clearly there. But the big question for a user is, how? How can a service give you good search results without collecting all that data? This is where it gets really interesting. How do these tools actually protect you differently?
The foundational difference is something they call a zero-knowledge approach. The core idea is simple. The service aims to know absolutely nothing that can link a search query back to a specific person. They use these really robust anonymization layers to decouple the search from the user.
Okay, that sounds a little complex. Can you, walk us through it step by step? What happens from the moment I type something in and hit enter?
Sure. So step one is just encryption. Your browser immediately encrypts your search query using standard stuff, HTTPS, TLS. So right away, it's secure in transit.
So nobody in the middle can read it.
Right. And that encrypted request gets sent to the search engine's proxy server.
Okay, and the proxy server is the key intermediary here, isn't it? It's the shield between me and the big index that has all the answers.
It is the crucial second layer. Its only job is to purify that request. It strips away all the identifiable metadata, your original IP address, your device fingerprint, anything that could give you away. Once the query is purified, it's anonymous.
And the engine doesn't even need its own index for this to work,
Yeah.
right? It can tap into a major provider without giving you up.
Correct. The newly anonymized query is then forwarded to an index provider. That could be Microsoft or Google, for instance. But here's the key part. Because the query came through the proxy, the index provider, like Google, only sees the proxy's IP address. It never sees yours.
That is just a brilliant way to do it. You get all the speed and relevance of a massive index, but without paying for it with your privacy. The index just thinks the proxy server itself is doing the searching.
And it works in reverse, too. The results come back through that same proxy, which then delivers them to you. And then comes the final layer, the logging policy. These engines, for the most part, just avoid storing long-term logs of queries or IPs.
But wait a minute. If they don't store any long-term logs, how do they get better? Don't you need to analyze some data to improve search quality?
That's a great question, and it's where the good privacy engines really prove their worth. They can perform what's called aggregated logging. So they can analyze search trends across millions of users to see what's popular or where their index has gaps, but they do it without collecting any identifying information.
So it's the difference between knowing, hey, 10,000 people searched for hiking boots today versus knowing user X searched for hiking boots at 9 a.m. from this specific location.
Exactly. That distinction is paramount. They aggregate the data before it can ever be tied to an individual. So there's no history available to be sold or subpoenaed or leaked in a breach.
So you've got this multi-layered protection, the encryption, the proxy hiding your identity, and then a minimal or zero log policy. Okay, this sounds amazing, but we know from industry reporting that not all tools that call themselves private are created equal. So if someone's ready to switch, what are the, say, 4 most critical things they need to be looking at?
That is the most important takeaway here, because the infrastructure, the transparency, the business models, they all vary so much, which means the level of privacy you actually get varies too. You have to look past the marketing.
Okay, let's break down those 4 areas. Start with the most basic one. Logging policies.
First and foremost is the logging policy. You have to look for minimal versus zero log guarantees. If a service says minimal logging, you need to ask, what does minimal mean? How long is it kept? A zero log guarantee is the gold standard. It means if law enforcement comes asking for data, there is literally nothing to hand over.
And that leads right into the second factor.
Right.
How are they making money? The profit structure. Because if they're not selling my data, they have to keep the lights on somehow.
Absolutely. If a service is free, it's usually funded by context-sensitive ads. That's advertising based only on the keywords in your current search, not on a profile built up over months.
No behavioral profiling.
None. The other option is a subscription. That offers the highest assurance because you're the one paying them directly. So there's no financial incentive to monetize your behavior.
Okay, third, and this one feels like the hardest for a user to check. Auditing. How do you really know they're doing what they say they're doing?
Trust but verify, right? Especially in privacy. You should look for services that have gone through independent third-party audits. An outside security firm comes in, looks at the code, looks at the infrastructure, and confirms that their claims are real. Without an audit, you're just taking them at their word.
And history shows that's not always a great idea. Okay, finally, the index source. Does it matter if they use their own index or just borrow results from a giant like Google?
It matters a great deal for 2 reasons: search quality and neutrality. If a service just proxies results from one big player, you get great relevant results, sure, but you're still subject to the biases and algorithms of that big player's index. Independent indexes, or ones that mix results from multiple sources, tend to be more neutral. The quality might feel a little less perfectly polished at first, but it's a trade-off between convenience and true independence.
And that really gets at the most common pushback you hear, right? If my results aren't personalized, aren't they just worse?
They're not worse, they're just different. You get what we call clean results, unfiltered by what a company thinks you want to see. You might have to tweak your search terms a bit more, but you're breaking out of that filter bubble.
And what about speed? Is there a performance hit?
Honestly, any tiny bit of latency from the proxy is generally unnoticeable. Performance really isn't a good excuse anymore.
So for someone listening who is ready to make the jump, can you give us a few examples of some real viable options out there that kind of show these different approaches?
Definitely. There are great examples across the whole spectrum. You could look at StartPage, for instance. Their whole philosophy is about giving you high-quality results from a major index, but with incredibly strong anonymization. They're that robust shield we were talking about.
And they use contextual ads to fund it, which keeps them out of the data business.
Correct. Then there's DuckDuckGo, which is probably the most well-known. They've achieved massive scale. They focus on privacy-focused results, but also integrate other tools like tracker blocking in their browser. They're building a whole privacy ecosystem that's really easy for anyone to use.
And what about for the advanced user, the person who thinks even relying on a commercial service is a risk?
Then you look at something like SearXNG. This is the highest control option. It's an open source meta search engine that you can actually self-host. You basically create your own private search tool, pulling results from wherever you want. It's for people who want absolute, verifiable control.
This has been incredibly helpful. I think the main insight here is that using an encrypted search engine isn't just a tech choice, it's a fundamental one. You're choosing neutrality over surveillance.
Absolutely. It just changes the entire data equation. A zero-log policy and strong encryption, well, they dramatically limit what's available to third parties or for government requests because that identifying data just isn't there to begin with.
That being said, we should probably ground this in reality. The tech is strong, but privacy is never a simple on or off switch.
It's so important to recognize that. No online service can guarantee absolute immunity from every single threat, especially if legal frameworks change. This approach is the best defense we have, but it doesn't solve every single privacy problem online. And that raises a really important question for you, the listener, to think about. If you switch to a zero-knowledge search, what other steps are you taking to protect the rest of your digital life? Your browser, your operating system. What's next?
The crucial question to consider as you bring these tools into your daily routine. Thank you for joining us for this essential breakdown of encrypted search.
And remember to like and subscribe to the Privacy Report wherever you listen.
And thank you for tuning in.
This episode was made with the assistance of AI.